So let's talk about health, because for parents, they're always the ones who have the ones that have to sacrifice. So what's realistic for parents who are juggling work, kids, and soccer when it comes to staying fit?
Great question. And, I'll say sometimes I'm a little hesitant sometimes to use myself as a case study, because I'm just lucky in the sense that I'm in a job where I'm physically active and I can kind of exercise with the people that I work with. But in any case, again, as I've become a professor and I've kind of got into less working on the field or in the gym and more, then I'm in the same boat as a lot of other people.
So you sit all day like me?
Most of the time, man. Yeah. And the problem is the best work I do is when I'm like this with my computer. I wrote my PhD thesis that way. So it was a sedentary, other than being asleep, it was burning as little calories as possible. So I get it. And so I think in general, what happens is that adults, they start to get out of shape in their 20s. Probably the standard kind of thing that people do. They graduate high school, maybe they go college, university, or whatever, or they start working, and if they finish their university degree, then they start working 4 or 5 years after graduating high school, and the work is usually sedentary. So fitness starts to take a bit of a hit. But they're single, and maybe they're not living.
No one's telling them the truth.
Away from home yet, or they don't know reality yet. And, so they still have, if they want to, if they're motivated, they still have some time to go to the gym and stay healthy.
Ah, got you. Okay.
Then they get married, and marriage is awesome. It's not for everybody, maybe, but I think it's a great step to take. And then soon after that, you have kids, and then of course, then you buy a house, and as I don't have to tell you about mortgages. Okay, so it's like, what happens, in your 20s, 30s, and then early 40s? Well, you get financial pressure that wasn't there before. You get really significant time constraints that weren't there before, because the kids are
playing
no matter
soccer.
what. Yeah. You gotta work a lot harder. You gotta try to progress in your career, and I know I'm ambitious. I know you are too. And we want to be successful in our careers. But the truth is, part of that drive is because you got to make ends meet. The costs go up. So it's not just that, in fact, a lot of times people, when they get married or whatever, they tend to be more successful in their career because of that pressure. So that's there. The time constraints. And then, you're not sleeping. It's hard to eat well because it's, you're up with the baby, all these things. So all of those factors lead to people basically neglecting their fitness and I think neglecting their health in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s. And unfortunately, sort of the status quo way that people handle that is that, and I say it's unfortunate, but it's true. And I can even speak about my own parents as an example. And they start to take their fitness more seriously once they get diagnosed with a health problem.
Yeah.
Diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, and knock on wood that hopefully it's not a serious health problem, but often, it is. And I hate to say the words too late, but, a lot of times if you have a bunch of health problems that have accumulated, it's a little bit too late. So it's not the optimal strategy. Okay. And, the only other thing maybe that people do is they wait till the kids are out of the house, but it's the same thing. So it's like you get back into fitness in your 50s, and and that's not optimal. So what do you do? Well, I would argue that most of the advice and even the guidelines from some of the regulatory bodies, and of course they're giving this advice because they're looking at science and data, and they're saying, for example, you need 150 minutes a day of cardiovascular, not a day, sorry. You need 150 minutes a week.
I was going to say.
Yeah, no, that's too much.
Yeah.
150 minutes a week of cardiovascular exercise. You need 10,000 steps a day. There's this whole thing about zone 2, the kind of moderate to high intensity cardio, and you need to do it for 30 to 60 minutes. You need to do strength training 3 days a week for your total body, every muscle group, and you need mobility. And, I know we talked about yoga and stretching, and it's good advice. And technically speaking, if you ask me, what do adults need? Well, yeah, adults need cardiovascular training, adults need strength training, and adults need some type of stretching and mobility and yoga.
But is that realistic?
Right, yeah. And they also need to sleep, ideally 7 hours. Okay, is it realistic? No, it isn't realistic at all for a busy adult in their 30s and 40s who is managing family, career. It's not realistic. So what I think is very important to do, fitness professionals, people like me, professors, whatever, that teach people, okay, is that we have to start thinking in this way. And also just everyone that's in it needs to also, to their own extent, thinking in this way, even if they don't understand all the science. Well, what do you have time for? What is realistic for you? Okay. And at a minimum, that might mean 15, 20, up to 30 minutes of exercise sessions. Fit them in when you can. It might mean 2 bouts of 15 minutes of exercise, 1 in the morning, 1 at night. It might mean walking up and down your office for, you know what I mean? Or
I might do a bit of that.
Or taking small breaks to do, push-ups and things on your own. It might mean extra walking in the evenings if you have a dog, if you have this. It might mean, and again, funny enough is that a lot of this stuff I'm saying, it's like I came to this conclusion, and in fact, one of the challenges, like I call it a challenge, it's like, people don't like to hear me say this maybe, but I always felt that, like, because I'm in fitness, like I have to be in shape. I cannot allow myself to gain weight. I cannot, so like, even if I'm totally swamped with work, whatever, the first condo I had, honestly, man, was on the 15th floor of a building.
Don't say it.
Yeah. I used to walk up the stairs every day. I didn't take the elevators. So no matter what, even if it was a crazy busy day and I didn't do, like, I did no exercise at all, I did that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. These are just things that I solve the problem in my own way. But what I'm saying is that I think we need to encourage people rather than neglecting it. I would say, look, if you came to me and you said, you know what, Rich, I don't have more than 30 minutes a day and I don't have more than 3 days a week to do it. I'd say, great. Okay, here's what you can do. Okay, and here's maybe a few little things that you can try to do in your own routine to squeeze out another 10 minutes here and there or whatever, right? When your kids are young, they're too big now. But yeah. You can squat holding them. You know what I mean? You seriously, you can play with them. You can do things that, like, I know it sounds silly, but it's like, okay, what's the alternative, right? Well, the alternative is just, don't do anything.
That's not an alternative.
What happens? You start gaining weight. Your fitness goes down. Bones, joints, everything, you start to get problems. And so right now in Canada, there's some data that came out very recently. It's almost 70% of Canadian adults are overweight.
Wow.
Over 30% are obese. Okay. Forget about how it looks. It's nice to, people don't want to have fat on their body because they don't like the way it looks, but the health consequences of that are significant. Overweight and obesity make it way more likely that you're going to get heart disease, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, and any other bone, muscle, or joint problem. We call them orthopedic problems. On and on and on. All of the negative health consequences that people get as they age. Diet is important for sure, but exercise is like the superpower that can help people prevent chronic disease and also even help them manage it in the early stages when they get it. And to me, the solution for a busy adult is not to follow the guidelines, which literally aren't realistic, is to find things that are. And I'll give you, there's like it's a logical fallacy. Okay, it's the all or nothing fallacy. So essentially what that means is that if I were to tell you, well, okay, the American Heart Association, as I said, tells you that you need 150 minutes a week and it has to be high intensity or whatever. Like, I don't know the exact guidelines, but whatever. And you told me, I can't do that. And we do that. And we
I have kids. I can't work out 2 to 3 hours a week.
I'm busy. Job. You got people that rely on you here. This is a big business, and right. So you can't do that. So if you were to then fall victim to the all or nothing fallacy, well, okay, that means that if I can't do the 150, I may as well do nothing, right? And that's how people are. Like, once they get it into their head that, well, I joined a gym and they have these yoga classes 3 days a week, and I have to go. Once they miss one of those classes, they don't stick with the other two. They stop completely. That's what happens. So, like, combating that all or nothing fallacy to me is a big deal. One of the courses I teach at the university, it's called Introduction to Health, but there's a whole module on mental health and on motivation. And on what gets people motivated to exercise and get healthy, and what keeps them motivated. And I think combating that all or nothing fallacy is a big one. And I think, it's worth every busy adult to consider that, because again, what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is a very high likelihood of chronic disease when you're in your 50s and 60s.
Well, yeah, because it's the compounding effect of doing nothing versus the compounding effect of doing something.
Yeah, and something is always better than nothing.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah. So we've talked about the parents. Now let's talk about the player. What does development actually mean, and why is more games not the plan?
That's a good question. I think, and I know we spoke a bit before about, how do you measure development? What does development mean? Well, development, I think it's an interesting concept that you can take what is put out there, and obviously Canada Soccer didn't invent this or whatever. Many other FAs and associations throughout the world have been speaking about this for a long time, about sort of 4 pillars: physical, technical, tactical, psychological. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 because the psychological gets broken up into psychosocial versus
social emotional,
etc. Social emotional. Okay, so in any case, whatever pillars you want to go by, but I would argue that you need, as much as is possible, standardized, valid, reliable, and objective ways to measure the performance in those pillars, and then tracking those standardized, objective measures over time to see, number one, are they improving? But remember, improvement in and of itself, it's not the be all end all, because you need to look at improvement relative to the norm. And this is, again, you'd need somebody that at least has an understanding of statistics and all that, which you don't have in Canada Soccer, so forget about it. But but if you did, you'd need a data analyst to work with maybe sports scientists and whatever to come up with these things. But the physical pillar is very easy to measure and track. So I could very easily tell you whether or not a player is improving and developing physically. Okay, and that's relative to whatever standard you want to go by. Okay, technical ability, believe it or not, there are. Okay, you can look in the literature for tests of technical ability which are externally valid. So that's a concept. Basically means if you test players at different levels of play, let's say college versus pro, third division versus second versus first, and then national team. You have different levels. Those are sorry. I'm a hand talker, man. Yeah. So those are objective levels of play that everyone can agree on. One is higher than the other, right?
Yes, of course.
So if you test a large enough sample of players at those different levels, and you find that certain technical tests, whatever they are, there's lots of them. There's dribbling, slalom tests. There's keep up thing. There's lots of them, right? Okay, and you find that some of them are really, really excellent predictors of what level a player can get to. Well, those are the ones. Those are the measures of technical ability that I would argue the national and provincial associations, the FAs in the rest of the world, those should be mandatory part of the testing curriculum of the high performance programs. So now you've got physical and technical, right? Yeah. Okay. Psychosocial, it's tough to assess. But there are, though. The thing is that, there's a huge field of study. There's psychology, sports psychology. There are, you can administer tests that can measure all kinds of things. And, we can get into debates about which are valid, which are not, which are better, which are worse. IQ, decision making, there are. Okay. And then finally, on the tactical side, it's difficult to assess and objectively measure, tactical ability, decision making in players. That's tough. And in fact, if we had that, we'd have like the holy grail.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
But believe it or not, now, Clyde, like I have colleagues, again, other people that used to be here, friends of mine and colleagues of mine that are not here now because competent people don't stay here. Okay, and I have, these are people that I know that are working in universities now on objective and standardized ways to quantify decision making and tactical ability, not just of individual players, but of teams.
Wow.
Groups of players and teams. There are ways that you can do that, and on top of everything else, you can even use the iometer to assess the tactical ability or the overall performance level of players in somewhat of an objective way. I'll give you one example, and again, by the way, I'll just tell you because it's long enough now. 10 years ago, I proposed this to Ontario Soccer, okay? And again, I was met with the same either complete ignorance of it, disregard, it was shot down and okay, whatever. But this is just one idea, okay? What if you had in your so-called development league, you had the game sheet from the opposing team was given to every coach with every player's name as a row, okay? And then you had just one column, okay, that was left blank, which we called performance rating. And it could be a scale from 1 to 5, let's say, or 1 to 10 or whatever, right? But, okay, you figure out the resolution. Every opposing coach, because he or she, they're coaching in the development league, right? So that means their job, they want to win, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
But what's their job? Their job is develop players.
Yes,
the league
job
is there to develop players.
Yes.
That's what Canada Soccer wants, right? We want, okay. So now, part of their job, whether they like it or not, is they have to give their own personal opinion as to the performance of every player, not just pick who the best one was or whatever. No.
But now you're talking about every player should be playing, and in order for them to get
they have
graded.
to be there, yeah. But and then playing time is equal. It's a development league, whatever. And even if some play a little less, okay, you still will get, okay, almost every single player on the team will be subjectively assessed, but based on an objective metric.
True.
Simple, 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Okay, right? From an opposing coach that doesn't have bias.
So, Rich, let me ask you this, because that's a fantastic idea, by the way.
I thought it was, but
Let's assume they did this not even per game. Let's just look at it and say maybe the club should be, I'm going to say, providing a grade or an evaluation to the player on a semi-annual, quarterly basis in order for the parent and the player to have something to, well, track against. Is that not a standard?
I'm not directly involved anymore, so I can't comment on exactly what's being done right now. I've got obviously lots of clients and colleagues and people in the league that would back this up. While I was there was no such thing being done. Okay? There was no standard. Again, I go back to, I'm convinced that the problem is incompetent leadership, because leaders who are incompetent, they reject every single good idea that they didn't think of.
But this is just, how else do you, I hate to use the word grade, but how else do you evaluate the player and track and manage
and eliminate bias? Because like I've joked about this, but literally this is the closest approximation to what how a talented player, so-called, is identified into the talented player pathway in Ontario. This is how it's done. Hey, bro, let me tell you who my best players are on under 14.
What do you? Come on, this is crazy.
So, it's the coach who is telling the coach at the amateur level who is telling the provincial coach who his or her best players are.
So showing up to the tryout, it's already predefined.
I mean, again, if you told me, Richard, design a system which is biased and corrupted, okay, as much as it can possibly be, eliminate any objectivity, any standards, okay, I would say fine, it's already there. Just watch how the OPDL leads to the provincial screening, leads to the provincial team, leads to the Excel, leads to the TFC Academy. That's it, okay? How do you eliminate that? As I said, you would have to find, aside from the fitness testing, which is easy to make standardized and objective, aside from the technical testing, fairly easy, not 100%, not flawless, but you can do it, okay? Psychological, okay, that's the black box. We're gonna, it's tough to analyze, but you could implement standardized tests for those three. To me, the performance of players, they can go and work with video, and again, but they're gonna have to then defer to people that know what they're doing. Again, Canada Soccer has employed, it's now dozens of people. They keep hiring these people that they call performance analysts. They don't have masters or PhDs. They know nothing about statistics. They're just some guy that played soccer, maybe played for Canada, maybe played at a college level, whatever, got into coaching and learned how to use the coding system that they use, and that's their performance analyst. We have, again, one of the other areas where we have some of the lowest expertise that I've ever seen anywhere in the world is performance analysts.
Wow.
And we have experts that left here. Again, one is a good friend of mine that's finishing up his PhD in Portugal right now, but we have people that could help, and they're not there. But again, you would have to defer to the experts on the kind of the video analysis side of things. But you could also implement a system like that, where imagine if you have, let's say there's 16, 18 teams, and let's say you task not just the head coach, but the assistant coach too. Okay, so now you got 36
opinions.
Okay, opposing coaches that are, again, subjectively / objectively assessing every player. Do you think it would be likely that the truly best players in the games, how many games are there? 20 games, 30, whatever it is. So you have a huge sample, right? 36 coaches, 20 games each, whatever. Would it be more likely that those players that achieved a 6, 7 plus out of 10 are better, technically, tactically?
Yes.
Sure. And that at least would eliminate a lot of the bias. And in fact, again, what am I really suggesting here? I'm suggesting on the existing game sheet, add a column, photocopy it. If I'm coaching Vaughan and you're coaching Woodbridge, okay, I have a sheet with all your players on it. You have a sheet with all mine. And we have to.
But I'm going to give your team ones because I don't like you.
Fine. Yeah, no. And you know what? And then you would need somebody competent that looks at it and says, well, what the hell is this? Hold on a minute. Again, because, right, you know, and again, that can be part of it, but that can go along with all the other objective
I'm giving
measures.
you a hard time.
But you're saying, you know, how do you measure development? That's how. Okay, is the game, I think you said, is it not the be-all, end-all? No, it's not. But you can analyze their performance in the games that way, and then you can track and monitor all the other aspects of development, which, by the way, have nothing to do with the games. Wow. The physical side, you don't measure that in games. You don't have to. You measure that in training and testing. Technical, you schedule, standardized technical tests at regular intervals. Psychosocial, that's done completely on its own. Games are important, but you don't necessarily know that playing more games is going to be better, and you also don't necessarily know that playing less games is going to be better. I think games are important, but I would argue that games need to be meaningful. And for games to be meaningful, the best case scenario is that the competition is close. Okay, these blowouts that happen, like, I don't know, we've talked a bit about this, and, that doesn't help either side. It doesn't help one team to be scoring 11, 15, 25 goals.
But that shouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen if there was a fair and equitable system by which we determine which players play at which levels. Okay, you played OYSL, so did I. And again, okay, right? We all did. Like, I mean, that's more or less anyone who was good enough, let's say, to play even at the university level was in the OYSL.
Yeah, otherwise they weren't even looking at you.
Good enough, right? Yeah, wouldn't look at you. Exactly. So, was there ever? I mean, I'll tell you me first. I don't remember any game where the score was higher than 5-1. 5-1, and that was like North Scarborough in my day. Okay, Julian de Guzman, some of the best players in the country. 5-1. What do you remember, man? I mean, you're younger
we were the
than
team that was blowing everybody out.
Right, but how much? So, but how much?
It was never that bad. I think the only time it really got bad was Ontario Cups or something like that, where you pick up a team that was lower division or something like that. But yeah, it was always a battle. Every week was a battle.
I mean, in the league though.
Yeah, in the league, every week was a battle. There was nowhere that you could turn that didn't have the best players.
And that, I would call that meaningful games. And I would argue that probably if you had more meaningful games, well, that would do a lot more for your development than if you had, twice as many games, but the extra, half that you have are meaningless. So, yeah.
So it's not about the games, it's about development.
Development, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right. So that ties into what I'm going to call player types, and what I think parents need to hear is, for me, there's two different types of players. I'm going to say God-given talent and the man-made player. And for me, the compound effect of, multiple touches per day is, on top of everything else that we've talked about, is really what makes that man-made player, possible.
Right. Okay.
But with that being said, the man-made player needs, I'm going to say, two 4-letter words. HARDWORK. Right? You got to be willing to work hard. Yeah. Because if you're not going to work hard and you don't have the God-given talent, it's probably not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these two player types. How do you see that the compound effect shows up when players maximize the number of touches or training per day?
Okay, so this is what I would say. I think there's the 99.9, we can go 999 percentile. Maybe a good example from our generation, at least, would be Romario. All right, and you can go, before that, Maradona, and I in fact, talent-wise and all that, of course, I would put Messi and Ronaldo. And we don't have to argue who's better or whatever. Those are all in the 99.9th percentile in terms of talent and all that. But what's interesting about some of them, Romario as an example, and Maradona too, is that Like they didn't live like a disciplined professional lifestyle and still were able to perform at the highest level. Ronaldinho is another example.
Exactly, yeah.
So good that they could be the best in the world, even though they were, not sleeping, drinking, probably doing a few other things that, shouldn't be doing. Okay. And one of the ways that I think you see that is you see that, they had shorter careers.
Yeah.
And at least shorter peaks, Messi, Ronaldo, on the other hand, those are examples of, equal level of talent. We don't need to debate who's better. It doesn't really matter. But they took care of themselves. Okay. And they had long careers and, still playing. I don't know. Is Messi going to be in the World Cup?
I think he's there too. Yeah.
So there you go. So, and I don't know how old he is. Ronaldo is over 40.
Yeah. 40.
Right. You have Ibrahimovic. You have guys like that are, okay. So, training has changed. Standards have changed, all that. But also you do have, even in the modern age, Ronaldinho is sort of modern and didn't take care of himself.
Yeah.
So I would almost say God-given, okay, like you've got that level, which we can't talk about those. Those are, if they're that good and they take care of themselves, they're going to have a 20-year career and they're going to break all the records. And if they're not, they're going to have a 2-3 year peak where they're just untouchable and they'll fade. Okay? Take those out. The truth is, the God-given talent, again, okay, if those guys are the 99.99th percentile, well, here's the truth. Everyone who makes a living playing soccer, okay, that's not me and you, that's a much higher level than us, right? But everyone who makes a living, they're in about the 98th percentile. That means they're better than 98% of every single person who plays soccer if they make a living, okay? If they make enough of a living that playing in the league is worth it, because I know you said, is it worth it? Or, okay, is it worth playing pro soccer when you're barely making ends meet, when you know you have to sacrifice from age 18 to age 25, and then you got to try to start your career, 7, 8, 10 years behind? Maybe not. It is if you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, because an 18-year-old can't go get a 6-figure job. You know what I mean? So that's actually, that's probably the best decision that players should make by the time they're about 20. But in any case, let's call that a good living. Now you're in the 99.2, 99.3 percentile. Okay, almost all of the players that make a living playing soccer don't make a good living. I've seen it. I worked in Uruguay and traveled all over South America. Some of them, and they're good players. They have to have another job. They have to do whatever they can to make ends meet. I think there was a joke recently that, I don't know if you're watching CPL at all, but there's a player who I used to work with, plays with, now it's called Inter Toronto. I don't know, they keep changing their name. It used to be York United. Thomas Skublak, that like he's a realtor.
He's a realtor.
You see, he took his sock, took the card out, and and everyone's saying, "Oh, look at him, he has another job." Of course, he has another job. They're not paid very much over there, and he's not a kid. He's like, he's 30 years old or something.
Exactly.
So, anyway, but it's like, okay, so that's a good living, okay, and then you have a really good living. Why don't we call that, I don't know, 100% higher than the mean income for a Canadian adult or whatever. Well, that's the 99.9th percentile already. And then the 999 so all of those are God-given. They wouldn't even be making a living if they weren't. It's just, there's levels to it, okay? Now, if you're in that percentile, 98 and above or whatever it is, and you don't work hard and you're not, Romario, you won't make it. There's no way, okay? Everybody at those levels, and I'll give you one very, very good example, which I lived. I won't talk about things, okay? I worked with a professional club in Uruguay in the 2nd division, and it was a middle of the level club. Like we were, possibly could have been promoted, but eventually I think we ended up finishing 6th. And, so we weren't the worst, but nowhere near the best either in the 2nd division, okay? Every single player in that team, and it was very clear in my head because I went to work with them right after I worked with the Toronto FC Academy, like the next year, okay? And every single player in that team was good enough that they would have been one of the best players in the TFC Academy, okay? So that's the level we're talking about, okay? 98.5th percentile, 99th percentile, that's where I would put those guys, okay? Now, those players, they were professional in every sense of the word. They went to sleep at 10 o'clock. They ate well, no alcohol, okay? Again, we're talking, this is 10, 11 years ago, so, but still, we already had cell phones and social media. They didn't do that. Or if they did, it was
limited.
Yeah, limited, right? And, okay, they killed themselves in training. I've literally, in my own career, I've never seen anything like the way it was in Uruguay, okay? Every day was a fight, and literally a fight. Players would would punch each other in the face over things, and yell and scream and swear and fight, okay? You know that in Uruguay, everybody, I never forget, I tell this story, but the very first day I was in the dressing room, getting ready, getting the players ready before we headed out for our first warm-up, my first day there, I noticed every single player has these tensor bandages taping both ankles. And like coming from Canada, it's like,
what are you doing?
I'm thinking, what the hell is this? Everyone's injured?
Yeah.
And I remember there was the physio was there, and I asked him in my bad Spanish, but I said, like, what's happening here, right? He says, no, here, everybody tapes they tape their ankles all the time, proactively over there. They don't wait till they get hurt. They know that they're going into a fight, they're going into a battle, they tape their ankles every day.
Wow.
Regardless of whether there's an injury or not, okay? That's, it goes on from there. So they were professional in every sense of the word, and they trained harder than everybody else. They took it as seriously as I've ever seen. And here's something that's very interesting about them as well. Not only, okay, so again, there's God-given talent there, because they wouldn't be there if they didn't have it, right? There's the professionalism and the hard work to the highest level that it can possibly be, okay? They also cheat. And not only do they cheat, they like cheating. They do anything they can to win. Here's, again, me coming from, and I was working in high levels in Canada. I was working in professional soccer before I went to Uruguay. National team, I was at the World Cups, So anyway, we would do these little exercises like a speed competition where, you have to do a little shuttle run, and then the one that gets through the gate first gets a ball, and the other one becomes a defender, and, 2-3 reps go by, and I'm seeing like every single one of them is like not putting their foot on the line.
100%. Like, I got to be first.
And I remember kind of like, talking to the head coach. Oh, another guy who the best coach I've ever worked with, the most competent, the most knowledgeable, whatever. He was in Canada, and he couldn't take it anymore, and he left, and he went to South America. Rafael Carvajal is his name.
Oh, wow.
Very good mentor. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him personally, no.
So anyway, and I remember just saying, look, man, they're all cheating. I was kind of like, I was like, what are they doing? Because the purpose of the exercise is to build fitness. Yeah. It's not, right? And he just was smiling. He was like, yeah, isn't it great? And then I'm thinking like, but he's right though. He's right. And take that to the highest level. Like, that's the country, okay, that is, they're natural underdogs over there. They're sandwiched in between Brazil and Argentina. Huge, with a huge population, but Uruguay was the first power in South America. Uruguay won the first 2 Olympic championships, and they won the first World Cup. And they have 4 stars on their shirt.
I didn't know.
2 of those are Olympic championships. But if you ever tell an Uruguayan, hold on, you only won 2 World Cups, right? He said, no, there was no World Cup in the 1920s. So so they have this whole thing, and again, that's why I would say that like, it's a real useful exercise for coaches to go and, get out of their comfort zone and go and do an internship. Don't go to Barcelona. Like, Barcelona's great, fine. Yeah. Go to Milan, like, fine. Yeah. But go there. Go to a random second division club in a country like Uruguay, and you see reality, okay? And so going back to like what you said, hard work. Like, everything about those players and the environment that they're in, everything, it is making it that as likely as possible that they will reach their full potential, and the cream rises to the top, okay? And again, because of where they're located, there's Brazilians that come and try out, there's Peruvians, and they're all, each one that comes is like tougher and better and whatever than the one before it. And again, this is just a middle level second division club. And we did in preseason, speaking of blowouts, we did end up playing Liverpool, Uruguay, okay, which, there's an English history there. They don't like the English, but there's a history. So many of the clubs have names like Wanderers and whatever. So Liverpool, which was one of the better first division clubs, and by the way, that's when we transitioned to like beautiful grass. Before that, it was dirt, and they smashed us. Like, I think they put like about 11 goals on us, and it was not a good result. But I remember talking to the head coach about that game afterwards, and he says, because I was like, what happened? And he said, no. You know what it is? It's the difference between our players. And so now we're talking the difference between, let's say, the 98.5 percentile to the 90, or the 99.2 to the 99.5, these small differences, right? He says, those are the ones that make less mistakes. So everybody makes mistakes, but, and this is, again, that psychological side of things, which God forbid you're ever going to get someone to actually assess those things. Here in Canada, we shy away from it, right? Because we're so scared of offending people.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. But your ability to recover from mistakes, your resilience, or whatever you want to call that, right? The ability, let's call it this, that when you make one mistake, it is now less likely that you're going to make a second one versus more. Because mistakes are like quicksand for most players.
Yeah.
If you had a bad game, it's like
compound
one,
effect.
the other keeps happening. Now, somehow those don't. So they have that ability.
Yeah.
And, does that come from hard work? Is that God-given? Is that man-made? It's probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
But I would argue that the environment that I've described to you, I've given you a few, ideas of what it was like. And, we don't have time to tell you everything, but, we'll have a beer and we'll speak more about it. But, I think that environment brings that out of players. And we don't have anything even close to that here. As I said, I went straight from the TFC Academy there. Okay. The TFC Academy, like, oh my God, you've seen the facility. There's a private chef. These players, they get like gourmet food, lunch and dinner. Okay.
It's great.
They hang out there like it's the country club. They finish training and they take their dirty socks off and they drop them in a little pile and someone else does their laundry. And, and it's like, okay, and who knows how they even got there? They weren't assessed objectively, right? We all know that. So it's like, and this is how we're going to develop pros that are going to go compete with these savages that, like, they're, as I said, they're taping their ankles before training. We have no chance. And that's why our best players, Canadian players, okay, are the ones that went to Europe or South America at some point in their teenage years. The earlier, the better. The longer they stay here, the less likely it is that they're going to be successful.
Okay, so this brings me to a policy-style thought experiment that I've kind of put together. What if players could only play for a team based on where they lived, with a limited number of exceptions per team? Like, out of 18 players, maybe 6 could be out of boundary, which would reduce the chaos, maybe stop the constraints and movement, and force potentially better player development locally.
So you mean...
Does that create a new problem?
Does that create a new... Well, I was going to say, so you mean the way it used to be? Before all this... before we allowed all these incompetent bureaucrats to mess things up. Okay, I think it's probably a good idea. I think one of the other barriers to, let's say, having the best players, the most talented players really progressing, cost is one of them, and the other, I think, is the stress of the travel and all that. And I know we've touched on it a little bit before, but this is like we're talking about it in a slightly different way. It doesn't help people in general that the commitment that they make to youth soccer or any other sport also involves like 2-hour drives all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we could like reduce that burden overall for the sport, for players, it would be better. The other side of it is just that, well, maybe, some of, and I keep saying out of town, but these days it's like, I don't know, there's all these other places are booming because no one can afford a house, in the city anymore. But like, at some point there's going to be, if you go far enough away, 200-300 kilometers away from city centers, then you're going to, players might get left behind. So it's tough.
But that's why you have the exceptions.
Right. And I would say overall, I'd be in favor of it. Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
Ontario Soccer, I hope you're listening.
They're not to me anymore. Well, they're listening, but they're not acknowledging that they're listening.
That's okay. At least they're listening. Yeah. All right. Let's go to the topic everybody throws around like a shortcut. Europe gets thrown around like it's a cheat code. Okay. Now, even my boys, we've gone to Europe, we've tried out for many teams, and we've had some different experiences. But more importantly, they went for development, for training, to get used to an environment that you potentially want to be in. And so I'm going to say, as we've gone through this experiment, there's been a lot of learning for us. Part of that learning was, you might need a European passport, or you might need different, I'm going to say, options, doors to be open to you. And, with all that being said, what are some things that parents should think about when they think about Europe as the fantasy?
I think putting it in that way, like calling it a fantasy, is probably pretty accurate. Dream, whatever, right? But go back to the percentiles that we talked about before. So Europe is a big place, but maybe we can speak about some of the bigger countries: France, Spain, Italy, Germany. You've got significant proportions of the let's say male population of the male children that play the sport. More than here per capita, even though here we have lots, because we do have a big population here, although we're not even as big as some countries in Europe. But regardless, what you have lots of kids playing, and they've already got a system whereby they have professional clubs with academies in a city the size of our city, the size of Toronto. If you go to Europe and you see cities even smaller than Toronto, there's probably at least 3 or 4 professional clubs, sometimes even more. Then you go, a little bit outside the city center, there's even more clubs. They all have academies. Those academies are also, they're all funded by the club. They can, they've got professional scouts that are competent, that know what they're doing. The scouts are objective. They are held accountable because they're, they live and die. They make their living basically based on the talent that they identify. And the clubs are struggling. Like that's a tough business. A lot of them are losing money. The only way these clubs can even survive themselves is if at least every few years, if not every year, they develop a player and sell that player, or they develop that player and the player stays in their own club, which means now they don't have to go buy another player and all of this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know really. I'm just for people that think like, why is Europe so much better? Well, that's why. And also, of course, so if I had to sum it up, the youth academies are incentivized to develop, punished if they don't.
Yes.
The first teams of every club are incentivized to win, punished if they don't, because there's a system of promotion and relegation. Okay? So the kids that grow up in that environment, they have a huge advantage over Canadian kids. And you don't see that advantage at 12 or 13.
No.
But you definitely see it in the high school years. And of course, by the time you're in, grade 11, grade 12, the gap is so big that it's really, really hard for a talented Canadian player to succeed. And remember, I mentioned Uruguay, never mind, Europe. So is it a dream? Is it a fantasy? Playing professionally, again, making a living, and maybe making a good living, absolutely, it's a fantasy. You got a better chance of winning the lottery. As I said, it's you have to be in the 99.5 plus percentile just to do it. So in that sense, it's a fantasy. On the other hand, if there is an opportunity to, let's say, take some of the money that you might have spent on, the OPDL, where the coaching is no good, the fitness is a scam, the system is corrupt, whatever. And instead of spending it on that, maybe you spend it on, and there's everything from some of these kind of short, trips or camps or whatever to, there are academies and programs that house players for several months or even for years in a professional or semi-professional environment. If you de-invest in one and then invest in the other, again, knowing full well that it's still probably almost impossible for your kid to become a professional. But remember, we said there's lots of other benefits to playing competitive sports, which you don't get if you don't do them. I would argue that as long as people go into things with their eyes open about the reality, then maybe it's not a fantasy. It's a fantasy that you're going to be, Ronaldo, because the truth is, if you were Ronaldo, people would know who you are.
Yeah, they
right?
were a long time ago.
Yeah. But the more I work in this game and the more I work in this business and the more experiences I have, the more I see that, in fact, I think it's not only a viable option, I would argue it's a preferred option when you see how much it costs to be part of the so-called highest level here. And then again, all of those people, because they know the coaching and training and everything they're getting isn't good enough, they also then invest in other supplemental training. They also then, invest in all the traveling and showcases and all that. In fact, a lot of these opportunities that exist in Europe cost the same, but in Europe, you get a much better standard of coaching, a much better standard of training, and you get to be in an actual professional system where if you do well, there are opportunities, legitimate professional opportunities. So I like it, as long as you go with your eyes open.
Let's talk about something you're known for, and something that we may have already covered a little bit,
right?
Which is your opinion on Ontario soccer and Canada soccer.
I didn't let any of that out yet, right? So okay.
So what do you think people resonate with about your opinions, and what do you think they misunderstand when maybe your opinion gets clipped down to 30 seconds?
First of all, what I think a lot of people resonate with, and I would say that would include players, parents of players that are in the system, coaches, and then even some of the administrators and all that. And if I had to list like all of those and I had to quantify, it's thousands at this point that have reached out and literally, I mean, I could open my phone and I could just show you, thank you so much. You're saying what we want to say. And, like it's clearly resonating, and I have a few clips that have gone viral, and, so it's okay. It's resonating, right? Why? I'm telling the truth. Honestly, I'm telling the truth in an environment where almost everybody else is afraid to tell the truth, or they are corrupted and they are unwilling to tell the truth. Okay? Players and parents are afraid to tell the truth about what's going on because they know that they will be denied opportunities, and they will if they speak out. They will. Okay? Coaches and anyone else that works in the game at that level are afraid to tell the truth because they know that they will be denied employment opportunities, and they will. And I mean, listen, the associations even force coaches and parents to sign policies regarding content on social media, and it's purposely vague because basically the policy allows the associations to come after, parents, players, coaches, whatever, even legally come after them if they speak negatively about the program.
Wow.
There's a social media policy. Right. So I mean, obviously they're aware of it. And so why does the truth resonate so much, right? Because it's like, okay, you could say, well, it's fine. I mean, what's the truth? Big deal. Like, the truth resonates because Canada soccer and Ontario soccer are just lying to everybody all the time. Right? They say that there's a certain standard and this and that. Well, there isn't a standard. Or, the standard, it exists, but nobody enforces it.
So is it possible?
The standard is so low that it's a joke.
But is it possible? I have to ask, is it possible that maybe there's a standard that we just don't know about? Like, is it possible that the player testing and the results that happen and the game sheets that are submitted, is it possible, is it remotely possible that anybody is looking at this information to make an assessment of player development in the province that we're in, which is here in Ontario? Is it possible?
It's possible. There are good people. There are, as I said, friends and colleagues of mine that work at different levels. They're not all bad. The problem is because the leadership are both incompetent and corrupt. I keep saying that, but I'm sorry. It's just true. It's objectively true. Okay, like when you went to university, you paid for tuition.
Yes,
because partially anyway, you must have somehow known, or at least you had access to the information regarding the competence, the credibility of your professors. Okay?
Yes.
So I did my kinesiology degree, my master's, PhD, whatever, and now I'm working as a professor. Now, we are supposed to be experts.
Correct.
I'm not the best in the world or whatever, but I have a certain level of knowledge and expertise and competence, or I wouldn't be teaching.
This is true.
And I'm low. The people then at the highest level, like the real, the professors that are tenured, that are full-time, they get there because they have a track record of success. They've been doing it for decades, publishing research, working in the field, making breakthroughs, all of it. So that means that the degree and whatever, the education that you get from those people, it's valuable because of that expertise.
Agreed.
Okay? So we can measure and assess competence across, a wide range of different employments and fields of work and whatever. And by the way, part of it isn't just the educational level that you have or someone else, but in your business, competence is going to be assessed based on your success, your track record.
Agreed.
Do you help people? Have you done, I don't know what the metrics are, but you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, the leadership doesn't have that. And in fact, not only do they not have like a base level of competence, there are many examples of people that are in leadership positions that have done nothing. Nothing.
Wow.
Manager of coach development, never coached. Somebody that calls himself a player development expert doesn't have one player on his resume that he actually coached and developed. So they're incompetent, and they're not just incompetent. That would be bad enough. Okay, I'll use, I don't know. I'm going to use the language that I want to use, okay? You can be dumb, or you can be, let's say, mean, okay? All right? But you can't be dumb and mean. Okay? If you're dumb, but you're a nice guy, nice person, people will tolerate you. They'll be like, yeah, okay, he's harmless, right? Okay? If you're mean, if you're a prick, whatever, but you're competent, you can get people to work hard, you can get results, people will put up with it. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Of course.
It's the same in sports and business, whatever, okay? You can't be both.
You can't be both.
Here we have both at the top level, okay? So, the good people that work below them, okay, that work underneath, under the leadership of those people, it's a hopeless situation for those people, okay, honestly. Is it possible? Like you said, yes, it's not all bad, okay? But these are like fatal flaws in the system which can't be addressed until you bring in competent people, and those people cannot be corrupted.
So is that the reason why these new leagues, I heard the other day, and I know it's been around for a while, but the unsanctioned league is it's a thing now. Like I'm hearing more and more parents are, they're registering teams and they're playing unsanctioned, and the academies, there's an academy opening up every week now.
Let's talk about that word unsanctioned, right? So all that means is that the provincial or the national governing body don't sanction them.
Correct.
Now,
yes.
Okay, I would say it this way. First of all, okay, does the sanctioning of an incompetent and corrupt organization mean anything? To me, it holds no credibility at all.
You put it like that.
Okay, that's one. And then I would speak directly to the people that are involved in Ontario Soccer, Canada Soccer, Ontario Soccer and Canada Soccer. Who are you to be sanctioning anything? You're the standard bearers for what's quality versus not. Like they have this whole thing, they call it quality soccer provider or whatever. Accredited by Canada Soccer. Canada Soccer is not a quality soccer provider. Why are they the standard bearers?
Wait a minute.
This is the blind leading the blind. The standard means nothing. The sanctioning means nothing.
But isn't the standard from Ontario Soccer, from Canada Soccer, doesn't that come from a bigger body? Doesn't that come
comes from
FIFA?
Canada Soccer?
So it has nothing to do with with FIFA.
Okay, now you have, until very recently, I would argue no. Other than, they'll put propaganda out there and they'll tell you, well, we built our long-term athlete development model by looking at this, that, whatever. So maybe some of the content and the language and whatever is borrowed from other associations and all of it. But again, if you have, let's play devil's advocate and say the curriculum is good. Now, it's not, and we don't have time to get into it, but I can tell you it's not. There's a lot of flaws. I think we talked a little bit about development, about fitness testing, and it's not, okay? But even if it were, and it were implemented by incompetent people, would it work?
No.
You need a good curriculum.
And you need good
people. You need both, okay? One without the other, it doesn't work. So that's the challenge there. And then I go back to, so to me, the sanctioning means nothing. And so an organization that is unsanctioned, more or less, it's an organization that has looked at the way things are and said, well, why do we need to follow these guidelines? These don't make any sense. This just hurts us, and it's not putting the best interest of the player first. Again, it's driving the costs up. It's putting all this unnecessary bureaucracy and red tape. And you don't know how much money Ontario Soccer and these other organizations make from fines. Have you seen this? Okay.
Oh, I won't comment.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, right. And I'm talking again, like it's like there's a spelling mistake on a game sheet, you get fined. You know, the coach has to wear a certain color socks that don't clash with the team, and I mean, it's like, right? They're good. Again, incompetent bureaucrats are really good at enforcing these ridiculous, arbitrary rules and at punishing people. They're not good at producing anything. They don't develop players. They don't produce a curriculum that is good. They don't develop coaches. They're good at, punishing people. That's what they're good at. So the unsanctioned programs, I say you're probably more likely to get better quality from one of those programs anyway, because the sanctioning is worthless.
If you had the power to fix the pathway, what are the first 3 things you would implement?
The first thing is I would try to return to something that looked a little bit more like OISL for the league in which the majority of scouting is going to happen. So that at least the league itself is affordable, right? Doesn't mean, again, anyone who wants to run their own soccer program knows full well they're going to have to pay coaches, they're going to have to pay for field rentals. Those costs are there. If you or I wanted to run a soccer program, we'd probably have to charge fairly close to what everyone else is charging. Okay, so
there's fixed costs.
Yeah. So it's not the costs necessarily that I have the biggest problem with, but you got to remove the gatekeeping. So removing the gatekeeping, meaning player identification, you can send a lot of scouts to the OPDL, or you can send a lot of scouts to the new OISL, okay? But then the OISL needs to be affordable and uncorrupted, okay? From there, then I would say, well, a significant portion of the registration of all soccer, and I would make it fair. We want to make it 10% of every dollar that's paid or whatever, fine, whatever it is. That has to go to the association hiring competent scouts and then training those competent scouts with competent instructors, developing a real standardized objective system of assessment, which we kind of already talked about, and then helping those coaches and scouts to implement that system, not just in the OYSL, but everywhere. We need to cast a wide net. Ontario is a huge province. GTA is a huge, city area, whatever. And Canada, everything is very spread out. That's the way it goes. It's not unique to Ontario. I think the best possible investment that we can make in player development is scouting and talent identification. And then, okay, I guess that's 2, right? Okay. Again, I don't think we need to really reinvent the wheel. That old provincial program, I told you, man, that program was good. I'd like to try to see if we can go back to something like that. And if I could just quickly add 4 and 5, okay. We need competent coach education at all levels. It just like the people that are in there, like it just needs to be gutted. We need experts teaching coaches, okay? And then,
but I think we need coaches to be coaches. And what is that? What do I mean by that? Sorry, just to cut in there. Yeah. It's you need coaches to be educated, yes, but education is not just football education. It's understanding how to deal with people, how to deal with an athlete, a young athlete, right? At various ages. It's, the people, the coaches that maybe are at some of these clubs or the academies or wherever they may be. I wonder if they have if they have the necessary training, if they have the necessary knowledge, skill sets that are required to be coaching these young athletes.
Well, again, I would go back to the way we do coach education, because basically you can only develop yourself as a coach or as any other professional through education and licensing and through experience.
Yes.
I mean, there is no other way.
Exactly.
Okay. But again, we have a system that doesn't reward experience. In fact, it punishes experience. Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't reward competence. It punishes competence. And as if that weren't bad enough, the way that we educate coaches is it's about as bad as it can possibly be. So we would need to fix that, okay? And then, I think that was 5. I'm sorry. Yeah, the 6 is at some point we need I'll just say this, okay? I think there's no point to having Canadian franchises. I don't even call them teams or clubs. Canadian franchises in the MLS doesn't help Canadian soccer at all, okay? And in the Canadian League, we've got a CPL. Okay, it's not perfect, whatever, but we've got one now.
Yeah,
and
we do.
We've got League One underneath it, okay? We need some type of promotion and relegation. I will say, and it's relevant now, okay? Just in the past week, we've seen a CPL club, Atletico Ottawa, okay? They're my friends over there, right?
Yeah.
Okay? Drew, I hope you're watching this, okay? They knocked off Toronto FC in the Canadian Championship, okay? So you're seeing these CPL clubs, remember, they've got 1/25th of the budget of the MLS. Like, it isn't even, there's nothing like that, eh?
Yeah.
Okay? That's like in the FA Cup, some random, 5th division club or something beating Chelsea.
Yeah.
Okay? And in the same week, we saw, my former club that I worked with, York United, again, now they're called Inter Toronto, whatever. Maybe next year, maybe they'll be called Uptown next year, whatever. We don't know, right? Okay? Lost to the club from Montreal's League One.
Yeah.
Amateur club.
Yeah.
So never mind payroll, whatever. Okay, York United, they are what they are, but that's a professional club where all the coaches are paid full-time, where all the players are paid full-time. Full-time staff, training. They train at 9 o'clock every day. It's their full-time job. Lost to an amateur club.
That's
okay?
insane.
Believe it's Saint Laurent. I don't want to get it wrong, but
and they have a good program if it
they
was
do.
them. Yeah.
Okay. This is the kind of thing that if we had promotion and relegation, okay, those are the games that build players up to the level that they're capable of playing pro in other countries and they're capable of representing Canada at the highest level. Meaningful games.
I agree with you there.
So we need, again, number 6 is forget the MLS franchise. That is never going to develop pros. We've already seen they can't. Okay? We need our own league with promotion and relegation. And honestly, Clyde, like, we have it.
Yeah.
We have it already.
Yeah.
And as I said, in the Canadian Championship, we're already seeing, these upsets. And listen, CPL beating MLS looks like an upset, but not if you understand that the MLS clubs just have a bunch of money with no standards, no accountability, and no competence.
Yeah.
And by the way, the difference then between the CPL clubs and the League One clubs, it's nothing. The players are the same.
The players are the same.
Yeah, they have, some good coaching, whatever, but there's excellent coaches in League One.
And there's excellent players at both levels.
And at some point, they have to fight for their spot. That's all. And we can do it. So that's 6.
That's 6. I'm going to cut you off there. But what I will say is we need more people to get behind the CPL.
Canadians need to support Canadian soccer, and I call it a chicken and egg fallacy, because on the one hand, it's very common, and I'm guilty of it too a lot of times, is like we don't have that much time in our day.
Oh, man.
So to take 2 hours out of your day to watch soccer, it's like you might do that for the World Cup or
Yeah.
Champions League, but
I do it for Manchester United.
yeah, but for Canadian Championship, CPL, it's like you don't want to. There's some hardcore fans that do. A lot of Canadian soccer fans don't even want to watch, okay?
Yeah, which is a problem.
And we would say, this is where I go chicken and egg. We would say, like Canadians would say, well, I would watch, but the quality's not that good.
Yeah.
It's not, and okay, fair enough, it's not. The CPL quality isn't even as good as MLS, and MLS isn't nearly as good as any league that you want to watch in Europe or whatever. Like, it's not even close, okay? But why is the quality not good? Well, one of the main reasons that the quality is not good is because there is nobody watching. Because since there's nobody watching, advertisers, both for the TV deal, the streaming, the live games, the big corporate sponsors that you could get, the big banks, the private equity, all of it, right? Why do they invest in advertisements in the Premier League and Serie A? Why? Because they know that there's tens of thousands of people in the stadium. There's, who knows, hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million people watching, maybe more, right? There's eyeballs there. And so without that investment, and again, I don't just want the investment, because MLS has investment, but no competence and no standards.
Yeah.
I would want investment with competence and standards, with promotion and relegation, okay? If you have those two things, well, then the quality gets better. And now, again, we're into that chicken and egg thing. I don't think the investment is ever going to come. Let's call that the chicken, okay? That's not going to come without the egg, which is people watching. So like if you're a fan of Canadian soccer and you say, I wish it was better, I wish there were more opportunities, CPL doesn't pay any money, it's a dead end. Yeah, you're right, but it wouldn't be a dead end if there was millions of dollars of investment, which will only come if you put your money where your mouth is and go watch. And in fact, it's a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm. So support local.
Yeah, we have to. I think everybody has to, and I think it won't happen the other way. You won't get investment without eyeballs.
Makes sense. Let's talk about the business side, because this was, part of our outreach when we had a little bit of a chat.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to build careers doing what they love in sports, in coaching, in performance maximization, but they don't always think about the money.
Yeah.
What do young coaches and students need to hear that they don't actually want to hear?
Well, kind of like I said about for players, that you have to be, I'm forgetting exactly the number I gave, but let's say you have to be in the 99th percentile, more or less, right? To make a living, you got to be very close to the 99th percentile to make a living. Well, to make a living as a coach in any level of the game, okay? Well, let me say in professional soccer, because in fact there are lots of employment opportunities at the amateur level here in Canada, and it's
you want to make $800 a month if you're lucky,
right? Yeah. So you can make money as a coach. You can make money running your own business and all that in soccer and in other sports if you're good at it at the amateur level. But the professional opportunities, okay, there's a huge supply and demand problem on top of all of the corruption. What do I mean by that? Well, let me use my experience as an example. So I'm a fitness coach and conditioning coach, sports scientist, okay? It almost doesn't matter how much education, how much experience, whatever that I accumulate on my resume, okay? How many professional clubs are there driving distance from me, soccer clubs?
One.
Toronto FC?
Yeah.
And again, York United.
Okay.
Two.
Yeah, two.
Okay. Hamilton, which is,
Yeah.
I couldn't really work there and live where I live.
No,
I mean,
you have to
it's tough.
relocate.
Yeah, right. Okay, so two?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 jobs. Okay. How many, I don't even want to say hundreds, how many thousands of fitness professionals want those 2 jobs?
I can't count.
Everybody. And if you had talked to me again, I mean, I'm old now, right? But, when I first graduated or whatever, I would have killed.
You would have moved.
Clyde,
You would have
never
moved to
mind, I
Hamilton.
would have done it for free. I did for free. You don't know. I mean, we in the national team when I was there, we made less than minimum wage, and they only paid us for the days that we traveled. So you had to have another job in order to make it work.
So how do you attract good people if
don't.
you can't?
You have to find good people when they're very young and they're willing to work for nothing and build their way up into it. Okay,
but they're not going to stay for nothing.
Right, I know. And that's the problem that we all go through as coaches, okay? Eventually with me, I had my business and the business and the other work that I did was what afforded me the opportunity to work for Toronto FC for nothing, for Ottawa Fury for nothing, and I say nothing, I'm talking like not enough even to pay, the rent in the apartment in Ottawa.
Oh gosh.
You understand? So right. So, and I lived it, and I'm not the only one. I'm not saying, and players are living it too. So it's just, it's the way it is, right? Okay. But the players are younger and they don't have mortgages to pay for. So in any case, so the issue is supply and demand, and the clubs know that. So they know that there are thousands of other people that are willing to take that job where it doesn't pay well, okay? And because there's so many people that are willing to take that job, they also know very well they don't have to treat you well. Wow. And I mean, they don't even have to treat you with respect. They don't have to be honest with you. They don't have to do anything, and they don't, okay? So I can't get into it now, and and it's not unique to me, right? But most people have the very same experience that I did working in professional soccer in Canada, okay? Essentially, the proposition is this. Come and work for us because there's some status associated with it, and you get to put it on your resume, and if you're lucky, we'll let you come and be in the games and be in the stadium and whatever. But we're going to pay you shit. We're going to treat you like shit. And if you don't like it, as I said, there's 1,000 other people that are willing to do it for even less than you.
So basically, go chase your dreams, go chase the rainbows, and end up broke.
More or less, yes. And so the best advice I give people, because again, in my work as a prof and in my business, and I'm interacting with hundreds of young, kinesiology students, people that a lot of them I see myself, in them 20, 30 years ago or whatever. And I understand, it is absolutely a dream to work in professional soccer. And I've not done everything. But as I said, I've been to, women's under 17 World Cup, Pan Am
You
games.
have quite the soccer
right? Okay,
resume,
I've been
yeah.
in big stadiums, and I almost treat it. I feel this way about it, and the truth is, even conversations with my wife, she's said this to me, and I believe it's true. I am, and a lot of us become like addicts, chasing the high, which is, and I'll just tell you that the first World Cup I ever worked at, it just so happened to be in Azerbaijan. Canada, we were playing Nigeria, and at halftime of our game, Jennifer Lopez was doing a concert. And right after our game was Azerbaijan's first game scheduled. So this stadium, these are the teenagers, 16-year-old girls, right? Okay, the stadium had 36,000 people in it. Nigerian fans with drums going and all.
Absolute
it
madness.
was, yeah. And it, like, I'm talking about it, you can't see, but
yeah.
I have goosebumps talking about it still.
You can't replace those feelings.
And I have these memories of, like, players, I'm warming them up, and it's so loud that I have to be right, like, in their ear just to tell them, because if I was this far away, they wouldn't hear me. Okay, and we scored first, and the Nigerian fans got louder and louder, and they scored 2 or 3 minutes before, like the 88th minute, and I can't describe it. Like I got goosebumps all over. Like, it was unbelievable. The players all got down on their knees, and they're praying, and these are kids. These are 16-year-old girls. It's in fact, it's like the lowest level World Cup. It's a women's under 17. It's never mind. Imagine you're at the men's tournament and the senior men's. So it's like I'm chasing those highs. Okay, I made it work, and I'm kind of making it work in my own career because I have my business and my other work that supplements it. But my business suffers when I go away. Okay, I live for a year in Uruguay. I lived for a year in Ottawa. Many years I traveled all over the place with the national team. There were years where I was out of the country, 150 days. Okay, so it's
There's
like,
no way you were married yet.
no, of course not. No. Right, and that's the other thing is that, so never mind. Not only do you have to sacrifice, obviously, your income, and you have to have a job that's okay with you traveling, right, or a business that can support it, right. And if you're married, well, okay, your wife or your husband, whatever, has to support it. You won't see your kids, and so it's like, okay, go in. Like I said, for players, if you're going to go to Europe, you want to chase that dream. Go in with your eyes open. If you're a coach, a fitness coach, whatever, and that's your ambition, go in with your eyes open. Don't expect it to be any different than what I've described, because that's what it is. There are some highs, literally, right? Like that at the time, anyway, for me, they made it worth all the lows.
So let me ask you about this. The phrase work-life balance. Is it a myth? Is it a season? Or is it a skill? Because for me, I think I said this to you, it kind of comes in waves, right?
Yeah. So, okay, first thing I'll say is that I think for most people, working in sports, for most people working in business, and definitely for people who are driven to really excel and try to be the best, and I think most of those people will benefit from finding that balance. And I would just say from settling down, from getting married, from having kids. Without that, I think there's probably a void for most people, difficult to fill with the career, even if the career is super successful. That being said, at some point, the truth is that there's a level of like productivity and success, let's say, that some people can get to if they don't do the work-life balance and they don't have a family and whatever, that it would be impossible for anyone else to get to, because they can literally work all day and all night at it. I know we had a talk offline about this, and like what you said to me, Clyde, about like, when you started that you basically lived in the office, I did the exact same thing. When I opened my first facility, it was 2011 at Trio Sportsplex in the second floor there. And I mean, every dollar that I had went into it. I had a little bit of help from mom and dad, and also a line of credit, which, I was all in.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I had nothing. And so essentially for me, for the first year for sure, and even the second year until things, picked up a bit, I did live there. I actually had a massage table that I would take naps on because I was, so tired, and I did all kinds of crazy things. Like I ate cheese sandwiches for lunch and dinner because it was cheaper than buying meat. I
never went that far.
No,
I mastered the art of sleeping in my chair.
You find a way.
Sitting up now.
You find a way. Okay, you find a way. Because it was just so important for me to be successful, and the truth is, I didn't really have a choice because I didn't have a plan B. Okay, and again, obviously, I wasn't married and had no other dependents at the time, and so it's like, could you do that if you had a mortgage and a family to support? No. Okay, so there's something to be said about that. Is that healthy? Is that good? No, of course it's not. But I couldn't have made the business work at that time if I didn't do that. And I think there's a lot of other people who would say similar things, about their own business and their own career. So I do think ultimately it's probably better to have a balance. I think I would say though, professional sports specifically, like all that, I don't think it's smart to get into that if you want work-life balance.
I was just about to say, because there is no balance.
Right, no, there can't be. And so I think, maybe, throw yourself into it when you're young. If you can get to the top of the top where you're paid well and it's a reasonable schedule and you can make it work with a family, go for it. If not, you'll probably end up doing like what I did or whatever, and you focus a lot more energy on the business. And I said, my work as a professor, which is great when you have a family, and now I'm still kind of chasing that dream, but now it's like, I can kind of be a little more selective about the work I do, and basically I'm just not going to work in Canada anymore because working in Canada, as I said, you're basically just guaranteed to encounter incompetence and corruption. And even though in many other countries in the world at the higher levels, it's hard to make a living, the pay isn't always good. It's not easy, but at least you're in a true professional environment. As I said, academies incentivized to develop, senior teams incentivized to win, and competent people in charge. So,
all right. So here's what I'm going to say. If you're a promising athlete that wants help thinking it through, making a plan, I think it would be an awesome idea to reach out. Rich, very knowledgeable. Of course, we're always here to provide some guidance. And, what I'm going to do now, or what I'm going to do next, is my favorite part of the podcast, which is rapid fire.
Right.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get into it. 7 rapid fire, short answers, no overthinking.
All right.
Question 1. One thing parents overpay for in youth sports.
Supplemental technical training. You can do it with a wall and a ball.
One thing parents underinvest in.
Scouting, and eventually, if the kids are talented, an agent. So opportunities and people that can connect you with those opportunities. It's a dirty business, and without an agent, it's almost impossible. So
I think I'm gonna be the one to add on here. I think that's fabulous advice because there are so many people in youth sports just trying to empty people's pockets. Yeah. And I think the earlier you can get in front or partner with people that actually know, that are actually connected, sooner is always better. Yesterday is always better than today. Yeah. So yes, agree with you there. One skill every serious player must build first.
The ability to pass the ball accurately. Remember I said most players at the higher levels, what differentiates them is they make less mistakes. Mm-hmm. The biggest mistake is the accuracy and all of the other qualities that go along with simple passing. Mm-hmm. They can do all the tricks and all this, but it's like you get into a game, okay, in a professional level, the coach doesn't give a shit about your keep-ups and all that. He needs you to pass to that guy.
Yeah. Can you get it there?
10 times accurately.
Mm-hmm. A development myth that you want to kill forever.
I'm tired of all of this obsession with field quality, that you need to be on turf and that somehow, that you shouldn't be on turf. Mm-hmm. It has to be grass. It has to be perfect grass. And if it's not perfect grass, it has to be turf. And, somehow the turf is causing all the injuries and the uneven surfaces are bad for players and blah, 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 blah. There's a time and a place where you need a flat surface and, it's good for certain things. And, I obviously in our business, we have treadmills and we have, so I don't want to come off as a hypocrite here. Mm-hmm. I know you asked me before about, people criticizing. I think this is something people they just don't understand when I say it. So I'll try to be clear here. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are some things that you need perfect quality facilities, equipment, whatever for, okay? But if field quality was a factor that really significantly predicted or made it more likely that young players were going to develop into professionals, well then you'd have no professionals coming from Uruguay or almost anywhere else in South America. You'd have nobody coming from the entire continent of Africa. I mean, I can go on, but don't worry so much about it. Most of the time kids get hurt because they're undertrained and they're not in shape. So go for a good field if you can, but if not, anything is good. You can develop on any playing surface.
If you could change one rule in Ontario soccer tomorrow, what would it be?
The retreat line.
Oh, you have to dive into that one.
The decision. So the retreat line is that line, and I think it kind of goes out at angles from the box or whatever that all of the opposing team, if I have a goal kick, then the opposing team is required to retreat behind that line, because that's what allows us to develop, quote unquote, the ability to play out of the back. So now here's the thing. If you don't have any pressure on you, okay, and I have to pass you a ball and you have to open up and is that really that hard to do? Can you not train that again, with a ball on a wall or whatever, coach it? And so the skill or the ability to do it, it's not that hard to train. It's not that hard to develop. You could clearly develop it. So once we take the skill out of it, then the decision as to when to build out of the back, well, that decision has to be made based on me as a goalkeeper and my fullback and whoever looking at the opponent and saying, well, they've dropped off of it. They're not pressing us. Maybe now is the time. No?
Makes sense.
All right. So what we're doing with this retreat line is we're just socially engineering the game, and we're saying, no. You know what? You guys aren't smart enough to figure out when to do it. So we're just going to force the other team to not pressure you, and we're going to allow you to do it. And somehow we think that social engineering is going to lead to a better ability to build out of the back when the players are older. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I want anybody, any coach, any expert on motor learning or whatever, please explain to me the logic and the rationale behind that, because I always thought that the decision to play short, long, whatever, players make those decisions based on looking at the opponents and looking at their own teammates and saying, I think that pass is on.
It's situational.
So, I really hate social engineering. So, and I don't like it in sports.
For this one is going to be focused on Europe. One green flag, one red flag.
Green flag, it's a professional environment, right? Okay, so no matter what, if you happen to get into a youth academy, an under 19, anything, you at least you're in a system where the clubs are accountable for development. Of course, it's not going to be easy, and of course, I can't be naive. We can't be naive and think there's no corruption or whatever. But it is a professional environment which does not exist here. Okay, so that's the green flag. Red flag. Okay. I go back to the odds, the odds of actually making it. If players and parents make the decision to go to Europe because they believe in the value of the experience, the training, all of that, the pro environment, it's a good value. If they're going because they think that their kid is going to get a 6 or 7 figure contract from a big club, the truth is literally you have a better chance of winning the lottery. You might as well forget that, okay? Just to buy a bunch of, 649 every day, you have a better chance. So, the red flag, it's really, really difficult.
And the last one, what's realistic for parents who are juggling work, kids, and soccer?
Try to ensure that at least if the time devoted to each of those is not even, because it probably can't be, try to ensure that there is some time devoted to each every week, maybe even every day. And I would also argue, and again, I've learned this from being married and also from being basically getting my second family, which is my wife's family, who are lovely people, but none of them were really into sports at a high level either. So they are the first people in my life to really give me that perspective, right? You got to be inflexible about it. You got to be inflexible about family time. When you make it, and to whatever extent you've made time for it, you don't cancel it. You don't go back on your word. Even if it's 10% of your time or whatever, be inflexible. Yeah. And I'm not good at that or perfect at that. So I'm learning, but yeah.
We're all learning.
Yeah.
We're all learning every day. So here's what I want parents to walk away with. If you're making a decision in youth soccer, I'm going to go back to saying, compare the 4 things every time: development, exposure, the pathway, total financial cost,
right,
and the real life impact on your time, the travel, the stress, your family, and like we said earlier, your health. So development isn't really about the badge. It is definitely not about the labels. It's about the right environment and the repetition that compounds over time. And whether that's the physical training, the touches on the ball, or whatever it is that you might be working at, those are the things that really matter. So as a parent, you don't need perfection. You need a plan that actually fits when it's Tuesday, right? When it fits for you. So you really want to find a way to maximize a player's potential without it taking over your family time. And I believe that a lot of families that focus on soccer first for, when you think about your schedule, it's probably not the right way to do it, right? Soccer needs to be part of what you do, not what you do. But like we said, if you really want to make it, you almost have to be obsessed.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit of it's almost a paradox or whatever. I mean, it's like you can't avoid that fact. Try to, again, be inflexible about the family time that you do have. And the truth is, if you leave children to their own devices, those that are obsessed with the game, well, they're going to kick the ball and play with the ball and whatever, every spare ounce of time that they have. And the truth is, if they don't do that, go back to the discussion about the God-given, man-made, whatever. I mean, if they don't do that, it doesn't matter how talented they are, they won't ever get to a high level. Okay, but you know what? You can still say, Sunday afternoon is family time. Yeah. Okay, I don't care, right? I mean, after school, there's a certain time, like whatever it is, right? Like, obviously you're going to sacrifice a lot to have your kids in sports, and the money is just one of the sacrifices, but the time, the travel, the missing out on other things. Okay, so, be inflexible about the time that you do have, right? Great. And on top of that, you'll probably know if your kid's not obsessed with the sport, you'll probably know there's nothing wrong with that. Keep playing. That's true. Maybe they're only going to get to the club level. Maybe they're only get to play for their school for a few years. Maybe they'll play in university and then do something else. Yeah, and that's okay. Fine. That's okay. I think, more than anything else, I would say you can't coach or teach or whatever. You can't develop that obsession. You know what? We're going to end on that. So with that said, Uptown Experts, we're out.